Stop scrolling, because what you're about to learn could change the way you see attraction forever. I'm Sarah, and before you keep watching, I want you to pause for just a moment. There is something we need to talk about, something that has probably happened to you more times than you realize. Think back for a second. Have you ever met a woman, talked with her, laughed together, and later wondered if she might have liked you? Maybe months later, while replaying the moment in your head, you suddenly realize there were signs you completely overlooked. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Chances are you've already missed opportunities that were standing right in front of you. That realization can sting. It can make you wonder how many meaningful connections quietly slipped away while you were busy convincing yourself nothing was happening. But sometimes discomfort is exactly what creates growth. Sometimes the lesson that hurts the most is the one that changes everything. Today, I want to help you see those moments differently. Most men believe they struggle with dating because they aren't tall enough, wealthy enough, or naturally attractive enough. They assume the problem is their appearance, their income, or some quality they believe they're missing. But in many cases, that isn't the real issue at all. The biggest obstacle isn't a lack of attraction, it's a lack of awareness. Imagine standing in the middle of a field filled with gold, while insisting there's nothing valuable around you. That is exactly what many men unknowingly do when it comes to attraction. The opportunities exist, but they never recognize them. By the end of this conversation, you'll begin noticing patterns that once seemed invisible. Today, I'm going to walk you through 3 powerful signals that often indicate genuine attraction. These aren't random internet myths or vague guesses. They're subtle behavioral patterns that many people naturally display without even realizing it. Stay with me until the 3rd sign. It is by far the most overlooked one, even though it often happens in plain sight. Most men completely miss it until the opportunity has already disappeared. Once you understand it, you'll start recognizing situations that previously looked ordinary. What used to feel like luck will begin looking like awareness. And that's an important distinction. The men who seem naturally successful around women aren't always the most attractive or the most charismatic. Many of them simply understand how to read the situation. The frustration you've experienced may have very little to do with your appearance. Instead, it may come from never learning the language that attraction quietly speaks. Imagine trying to read a novel written in a language you've never studied. You might recognize a few familiar words, but you'll completely misunderstand the story. That's exactly what happens when people misunderstand how attraction is expressed. Men and women often communicate romantic interest differently. When many men feel attracted to someone, they're naturally inclined to become more direct. They want to approach, initiate conversation, and move things forward. Women's behavior often develops differently. Rather than rushing toward someone, attraction is frequently expressed through observation, comfort building, and subtle invitations. Instead of opening the door completely, it's often as though they unlock it slightly and wait to see whether the other person notices. This isn't about manipulation. It isn't about games. It's about comfort, timing, and emotional safety. Throughout human history, choosing the right partner carried enormous consequences. While modern life has changed dramatically, many deeply rooted social and psychological tendencies still influence how people evaluate trust and attraction. Because of this, many women don't immediately reveal everything they're feeling. Instead, they observe, they notice, they create small opportunities to see how someone responds. Attraction rarely announces itself loudly. More often, it appears in tiny behavioral shifts. A brief pause, a small change in body language, a moment of lingering attention. These are the whispers most people never learn to hear, but once you recognize them, everything begins to make more sense. Let's begin with the first sign. Ironically, it's also the one most men dismiss without a second thought. Almost everyone has experienced this. A woman lightly touches your arm while talking. She briefly places her hand on your shoulder. She brushes against you during conversation. Most men immediately tell themselves, she's probably just friendly. Sometimes that's true. Friendly people absolutely exist, but there's an important distinction that many overlook. Friendly behavior usually follows practical social rules. Attraction sometimes creates moments that go beyond necessity. That's why you should pay attention to what I call unnecessary physical contact. Ask yourself a simple question. Did she actually need to touch me? If the answer is no, the interaction deserves a little more attention. Maybe she wasn't trying to get your attention across a noisy room. Maybe she wasn't guiding you through a crowded space. Maybe there wasn't any practical reason for physical contact at all. Yet she still reached out. That doesn't automatically mean she's romantically interested, but it does mean something motivated that choice. The real clue isn't simply the touch itself, it's how long it lasts. This tiny difference changes everything. A casual, purely social touch is usually quick. A brief tap, a fast greeting, an instant of contact before immediately pulling away. There's very little emotional weight attached to it. But attraction often slows things down. Instead of disappearing immediately, the contact lingers. Maybe only for a second, sometimes two. That tiny pause is where many people unknowingly communicate far more than words ever could. Researchers studying nonverbal communication have long observed that people naturally seek appropriate physical closeness with individuals they feel comfortable around. When attraction grows, physical proximity often feels increasingly natural. Someone might gently straighten your jacket, brush invisible lint from your sleeve, rest a hand on your forearm while laughing, lightly touch your shoulder during an exciting story. Notice something important. After making contact, do they instantly withdraw, or do they comfortably remain there just a little longer? That difference matters, because prolonged, relaxed touch usually reflects comfort. Comfort creates openness, and openness is often one of the earliest foundations of attraction. Now here's where many men accidentally sabotage the moment. The instant they notice physical contact, adrenaline takes over. Suddenly they begin speaking faster. They overthink every sentence. They laugh nervously. They start moving awkwardly because they become intensely self-conscious. Ironically, their reaction creates the very tension that wasn't there before. Instead of staying present, they mentally race ahead. Does she like me? Should I flirt? Should I say something clever? The moment becomes less about connection and more about performance. Don't do that. Stay grounded. Let the interaction breathe. There's no need to force anything. There's no need to immediately escalate the conversation. Simply remain relaxed. Confidence isn't demonstrated by reacting dramatically. It's demonstrated by being comfortable enough to stay calm. People naturally feel safer around those who remain emotionally steady. When someone senses that you don't become overwhelmed by simple moments of closeness, they often feel more comfortable expressing themselves around you. You're quietly communicating emotional maturity. You're showing that connection doesn't make you panic, and that speaks louder than any rehearsed pickup line ever could. Now let's move into the second sign. This one involves eye contact, but not in the oversimplified way you've probably heard countless times online. You've likely been told, just maintain strong eye contact. That's incomplete advice. Real attraction isn't measured by staring contests. Instead, it's revealed through tiny changes in attention. Eye contact isn't just about looking. It's about how someone enters and exits that moment of connection. When people genuinely enjoy someone's presence, their focus naturally sharpens. Their attention becomes less scattered. Instead of constantly scanning the room, they become increasingly interested in the person standing in front of them. Sometimes this even corresponds with subtle physiological responses, such as slight pupil dilation under appropriate lighting conditions. Although this isn't something you should rely on because lighting, emotion, and many other factors can influence it. What's far more useful is observing the rhythm of eye contact. Here's what often happens. She holds your gaze just a fraction longer than social convention normally requires. Not enough to feel uncomfortable. Just enough for the moment to feel slightly more meaningful. Then, she looks away. This next detail is surprisingly important. Where does she look? If her attention immediately shifts toward the room, other people or unrelated distractions, she may simply be processing her surroundings. But sometimes something different happens. She briefly lowers her eyes, a subtle downward glance. Then, after a short pause, she looks back at you again. That sequence often communicates something entirely different. Rather than escaping the moment, she's processing it. She's allowing herself to feel it before reconnecting. In psychology, downward glances are highly context-dependent and can have many meanings. But within warm, relaxed interactions, they can sometimes accompany feelings of shyness, reflection, or emotional openness. The key isn't the glance alone, it's the complete pattern. Eye contact, a gentle pause, a brief downward look, then renewed engagement. That sequence often creates a unique feeling of tension. Not negative tension, but anticipation. And this is exactly where many men accidentally interrupt the moment. Silence appears. Instead of allowing it to exist naturally, they rush to destroy it. They immediately tell another joke. Ask an unrelated question. Start talking rapidly about something completely different. Anything to avoid those few seconds of uncertainty. But not every silence is awkward. Sometimes silence is simply two people becoming more aware of each other. Sometimes nothing needs to be said immediately. Emotion can exist without constant conversation. A composed man doesn't panic because words temporarily disappear. He remains present. He smiles naturally. He allows the conversation to unfold at its own pace. He isn't trying to win the interaction. He's experiencing it. That calm presence often creates far more comfort than endless talking ever could. Now, let's move to the third signal. And I want you to stay focused because this is the one that slips past most men without them ever realizing it happened. Ironically, it's also one of the strongest indicators that a woman genuinely enjoys your presence. At first glance, it doesn't seem romantic at all. In fact, it often looks completely ordinary. That's exactly why it's so easy to miss. I call this signal the privacy bubble. To understand why it matters, you first need to understand how group dynamics work. Whenever people gather, whether it's at a party, a cafe, a networking event, a family gathering, or simply a group of friends, the attention of everyone is divided. Conversations overlap. People interrupt one another. Someone is laughing across the room. Music is playing. Phones vibrate. Everyone competes for attention without even realizing it. In that environment, it's difficult for any meaningful emotional connection to deepen. There are simply too many distractions. Now imagine that, despite all those distractions, one particular woman begins looking for small opportunities to separate your interaction from everyone else's. She doesn't make a dramatic announcement. She doesn't say, "Let's go somewhere romantic." Instead, she creates natural reasons for the two of you to spend a few moments together away from the crowd. That's the privacy bubble. It usually begins with something that sounds completely practical. She might say, "Come with me while I grab another drink." Or perhaps, "Let's step outside for a minute, it's getting loud in here." Maybe she notices something interesting across the room and asks, "Come look at this." Sometimes she'll quietly lean closer and lower her voice so you naturally move nearer to hear what she's saying. On the surface, these moments appear ordinary. Most men treat them exactly that way. They assume she's simply thirsty, or that she genuinely wants fresh air, or that she's only making conversation because it's convenient. Sometimes that's absolutely true. Not every invitation carries romantic meaning. But when these moments happen alongside the other signals we've discussed, comfortable physical contact, extended eye contact, consistent engagement, they become much more significant. Instead of dismissing them, start recognizing the pattern. Attraction rarely depends on a single isolated behavior. It's usually revealed through multiple behaviors pointing in the same direction. That's what makes observation so powerful. Rather than searching for one magical sign, learn to notice clusters of behavior. When someone repeatedly creates opportunities for one-on-one interaction, they're often showing that your company matters to them. Think about it from a practical perspective. If someone has no particular interest in spending time with you, they usually remain within the group's natural flow. There's no motivation to create additional moments together. But when they intentionally invite you into smaller conversations, quieter spaces, or shared activities, they're investing attention. Attention is valuable. People naturally give more of it to those they enjoy being around. This doesn't automatically mean they're deeply in love. It doesn't guarantee romance. Human behavior is more complicated than that. But it does suggest something important. They've chosen to prioritize spending time with you over countless other distractions available in that moment. That's worth noticing. Psychologically, private conversations often create a stronger feeling of emotional connection than large group interactions. Without constant interruptions, people become more relaxed. Their tone softens. Their body language opens. They reveal more about themselves. The conversation naturally becomes more personal. That's why meaningful relationships, whether friendships or romantic partnerships, almost always develop through smaller interactions rather than public performances. When someone gently creates those opportunities, they're making space for connection. Now here's where many men unknowingly lose momentum. Instead of recognizing the invitation, they treat it like another task. She says, "Come grab a drink with me." He immediately replies, "Sure, what do you want?" Then he spends the entire walk talking about work, sports, traffic, or random topics that never allow the emotional atmosphere to develop. He remains polite, friendly, respectful, but emotionally unavailable. Nothing memorable happens. Within minutes, they're back with the group, and the opportunity quietly disappears. Not because he wasn't attractive, not because she lost interest, but because he never noticed that she had already created the perfect environment for a deeper conversation. Contrast that with someone who remains calm and emotionally present. He accepts the invitation naturally. He doesn't overreact. He doesn't assume too much. He simply enjoys the moment. Instead of rushing to fill every second with conversation, he pays attention. He notices her energy. He listens carefully. He asks thoughtful questions. He allows the interaction to become more personal without forcing anything. That relaxed confidence often feels incredibly comfortable. People enjoy being around those who make interactions feel effortless. Notice that confidence here isn't loud. It isn't arrogant. It isn't about showing off. Real confidence often looks surprisingly quiet. It's the ability to remain composed without needing constant validation. It's trusting that you don't need to manufacture chemistry, because genuine connection develops naturally. That's a mindset many people overlook. Now let's take a step back and connect everything we've discussed. The first signal was comfortable, unnecessary physical contact. The second involved meaningful eye contact and emotional presence. The third centered around creating opportunities for private interaction. Individually, none of these behaviors prove attraction. That's an important point. Human behavior is influenced by personality, culture, context, and countless other factors. Some people are naturally affectionate. Some maintain strong eye contact with everyone. Others simply enjoy talking one-on-one. This is why you should never build conclusions from a single observation. Instead, focus on consistency. Patterns matter far more than isolated moments. When several signals repeatedly appear together, they paint a much clearer picture. The goal isn't to become obsessed with analyzing every movement someone makes. The goal is awareness. Healthy awareness removes unnecessary guessing. Instead of constantly asking yourself, "Does she like me?" you begin asking a better question. What behaviors am I consistently observing? That shift changes everything, because it moves you away from fantasy and toward reality. You're no longer inventing stories inside your head. You're paying attention to actual behavior. That's a much healthier approach. Another important reminder: attraction should never become a reason to ignore someone's boundaries. Even if you believe someone is interested, respect remains essential. Interest can grow. Interest can fade. People are allowed to change their minds at any moment. The healthiest interactions happen when curiosity and respect exist together. Confidence is never about pressure. It's about creating an environment where both people feel comfortable. That's where genuine connection begins. Unfortunately, many men spend years believing they're simply unlucky. They assume everyone else possesses some mysterious gift they were never given. In reality, many successful social interactions come down to observation. Some people naturally notice emotional cues. Others learn them over time. The good news? Observation is a skill. Like any skill, it improves with practice. The more present you become, the more you'll notice. You'll recognize small shifts in body language. You'll notice changes in conversation. You'll become aware of moments that previously passed unnoticed. Most importantly, you'll stop relying on assumptions. Instead of chasing certainty, you'll develop perception. And perception creates confidence. Not fake confidence, not performative confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that comes from understanding people rather than trying to impress them. That's the biggest transformation of all. Because once you truly learn to observe, something interesting happens. You stop feeling desperate for signs. You stop overanalyzing every text message. You stop treating every interaction like an exam you have to pass. Instead, you become curious, relaxed, patient. Ironically, those qualities often make you far more enjoyable to be around. People generally feel drawn toward individuals who are emotionally secure. Security creates comfort. Comfort builds trust. Trust creates connection. And connection is ultimately what attraction grows from. So remember these 3 ideas whenever you're meeting someone new. Notice comfortable physical closeness. Pay attention to meaningful eye contact. Appreciate opportunities for genuine one-on-one conversation. Don't force them. Don't expect them. Simply recognize them when they naturally appear. Because awareness isn't about predicting the future. It's about understanding the present. The moments you once believed were random may begin making much more sense. You'll realize that many opportunities weren't absent. They were simply unnoticed. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: confidence doesn't begin when someone chooses you. Confidence begins when you learn to see clearly. The clearer your perception becomes, the less fear controls your decisions. You'll stop wondering whether you're enough. You'll stop assuming rejection before anything has even happened. Instead, you'll trust yourself to recognize what is actually unfolding in front of you. That quiet trust is incredibly powerful. Because once you stop chasing imaginary answers and start paying attention to real human behavior, you'll discover something surprising. Meaningful connection has never been about having the perfect appearance, the perfect words, or the perfect strategy. It's always been about presence, and presence is something every person can develop. I'm Sarah, and if this conversation changed the way you think about attraction even a little, then the next time life quietly opens a door in front of you, don't let uncertainty convince you it isn't there. Slow down, stay present, observe carefully, respect the other person, and most importantly, never underestimate the power of simply being aware. Sometimes the smallest moments tell the biggest stories. You just have to learn how to see them.